The average member of the United States House of Representatives has served nearly 9 years. The average U.S. Senator has served nearly 12 years. And there's members of Congress that have served over 40 years in Congress. That means entire generations of Americans have grown up with the same political leadership. When power rarely changes hands, we have to ask an important question. Is our representation still dynamic and responsive to change, or has it grown stagnant? This issue matters to each and every one of us. Congress determines federal taxes, student loan structures, small business regulations, and healthcare laws, also military spending. The policies they pass shape our financial futures, our career opportunities, and our civil liberties. Whether we are students, entrepreneurs, workers, voters, the structures of Congress impacts our daily lives. As a business owner and a student studying leadership and organizational systems, I've spent a lot of time thinking about how institutions stay healthy over time. One lesson that consistently appears in business, government, and organizational leadership is how the institutions require both accountability and renewal. In the private sector, no board of directors is allow executives to remain in power indefinitely without structural oversight. Leadership eventually changes. Organizations can adapt, innovate, and remain accountable to the people they serve. Our legislative branch should meet the same standard as the responsible governance. Today, I will persuade you that the United States should adopt constitutional term limits for Congress, both Senate and House representatives. Term limits are necessary because long-term incumbency weakens electoral accountability and because structured limits can reduce corruption while renewing democratic representation. First, I will explain how extended incumbency weakens accountability in elections. Second, I will show how term limits can reduce entrenched fundraising networks and open opportunities for new representation. Let's begin by looking at how long-term incumbency weakens the accountability within our electoral system. The United States should adopt constitutional term limits for members of Congress because extended incumbency creates structural advantages that make meaningful electoral competition increasingly difficult. According to a 2023 report from the Congressional Research Service titled Membership of the 118th Congress, a Profile, the average length of service in Congress has steadily increased over the last several decades. Members of Congress today remain in office longer than periods than in previous generations. At first glance, this might seem harmless. However, longer tenure gradually produces a powerful structural advantage known as incumbency advantage. According to a 2022 analysis from the Brookings Institute titled The Incumbency Advantage in Congress, incumbents benefit from strong name recognition, well-established fundraising networks, and deep familiarity within their districts. These factors significantly increase the probability that incumbents will become re-elected compared to new challengers. From a logical perspective, this creates a serious problem for democratic accountability. When re-election becomes highly probable due to structural advantages rather than performance, voters lose some of their ability to meaningfully evaluate and replace their leaders. From an emotional perspective, many voters begin to feel that elections are predictable even before they occur. When political outcomes appear predetermined, public trust can decline. And from an ethical perspective, numerous nonpartisan research institutions consistently identify incumbency advantages as a measurable and persistent phenomenon in American elections. Term limits would not eliminate elections. Instead, they would strengthen competitive nature of elections, ensuring that leadership turnover remains possible and predictable. Now that we've seen how long-term incumbency weakens electoral accountability, let's examine another important issue: how term limits can reduce corruption and renew democratic representation. The United States should also adopt constitutional term limits because structural limits reduce the development of entrenched financial fundraising networks and encourage broader representation in government. According to Open Secrets, a nonpartisan organization that tracks campaign finance data from the Federal Election Commission, long-serving incumbents consistently raise more campaign funds than the challengers. This happens because Incumbents developed large donor networks over many years in office. Over time, these fundraising networks have become deeply entrenched, and politicians who expect to remain in office for decades have spent significant portions of their term developing these donors and maintaining political funding relationships. While tenure is limited, however, the long-term incentive to build shorter and more focused and decades-long fundraising systems is reduced. Political careers become shorter and more focused on governance rather than campaign fundraising. Public opinion research also reflects widespread concern about this issue. According to a 2023 national survey conducted by Pew Research Center, cited public trust in government and views on term limits, a large majority of Americans across party lines support establishing term limits for members of Congress. This support exists because many citizens feel that Congress has become disconnected with everyday Americans. Long political careers sometimes create distance between elected officials and their constituents. Term limits would not eliminate political disagreements or partisan debates, but they could reduce political entrenchment and create more opportunities for new candidates to better reflect the evolving communities. So let's bring this discussion together. The United States should adopt constitutional term limits for senators and House representatives because extended incumbency weakens electoral accountability and because structured limits can reduce corruption while renewing political representation. Today we examined two major issues. First, we looked at how long-term incumbency creates structural and electoral advantages that weaken democratic accountability. Secondly, we explored how term limits can reduce entrenched fundraising networks while opening the door for broader representation. But structural reform does not begin in Washington. It begins with citizens. Within the next week, there are two simple actions that you can take. First, visit congress.gov and identify whether your representative and your two senators have publicly stated their position on congressional term limits. If they have not, then you should send them a short email or a brief phone call asking where they stand. Congressional offices require to track every constituent contact, even if it's a short message. The second thing you can do is research your state legislature and research whether your state legislature has introduced a supported resolution calling for a constitutional amendment establishing congressional term limits. If such a resolution exists, contact your state representative and express your support. If it does not exist, attend a local town hall meeting and ask their position on introducing one. If we want a Congress that evolves with the citizens it serves, then the citizens must remain actively engaged in shaping that revolution. Thank you.